Well, good morning, everyone. It's just great that we're all here together. We're going to spend a day together investing in an understanding about what our purpose is as a company. Not very many companies in the world get a chance to go into the journey that we're going to go into. It's pretty tough in the corporate landscape to deal with quarterly results and the pressure of expectations of those who own the organisations. We've earned the right to go from good to great, and we want to explore that today. The symbolism on the table that you see in front of you will take several dimensions through the day. But just to kick it off, if I can use an analogy, we're going to get hands-on with purpose today. We've spent a year on purpose as a senior executive team working through the concepts and trying to understand what it means for our business. Today, with 200 of us together, we're going to get hands-on, move from, if you like, the talk and the planning to a much deeper delivery and a much more material progression down that pathway that purpose will take us. Purpose has the ability to transform our company, to make us a great company. A few years ago, and you all know the story, we had to turn this business around. It was in really deep trouble. And we've done that. It's just really great. We have an organisation now that makes more profit than any other of the 37 health funds in the industry. It's just amazing. For a not-for-profit health fund that has no dividends to pay and doesn't pay tax, to be the most profitable in absolute dollar terms, bottom line, to be growing faster than it's ever grown before is amazing. It's fantastic. We've earned the right to make a really good company, a great company, and we build a foundation and a platform to make that possible. About a year ago, we started to investigate where we could find some ideas about greatness. And we looked into Jim Collins's book, Good to Great, and into Nikos's book, Purpose. And Nikos is here with us this morning, and he will take you after morning tea into that, if you like, Purpose 101 experience that we experienced a year ago when he spoke to several of us out at Werribee at a conference a little smaller than this one. It's important that we all get that foundational understanding of purpose and how it's impacted great companies around the world because it's the DNA that we want to have. So the GE looked at our organisation and said, we cannot stop at being good. And the enemy, as Jim Collins says, of great is good, that complacency that can creep in and to say, look, George, it's okay, we're doing all right. But if you ask our customers, if you look into their world and the way that they experience their health system, you'll find that, no, they still have greater needs of us. They want us to be there for them in a greater and more strategic and meaningful way than we have been in the past. And also, if you look at just the business capability of this great company, Medibank Private, we know we have a bigger role to play. You can sort of feel it when you look at it. You can see our dynamic organisation, the way we engage in the front line, in our call centre, in the powerful footprint we have in a market share sense, the amount of value we deliver, 3 million Australians. It's a big player, but we have a sense that we can be much more significant. So we asked you and your colleagues around the country about what is our purpose. And these are some of the themes that came through. Our colleagues said that we are big enough to reshape the private health system. So we're capable of reshaping it. They also said that we will become a trusted guide, that we could actually go that step further and be, for the customer, that help that they need to ensure that their experience in the health system would be one that meets their deep concerns, their anxieties, their stress, apprehension about encountering a system that they get confused about and don't understand. We received a message that we needed to be much more active, not waiting at the end of a customer's encounter with the health system and receive their receipts and their bills and then just do a financial reimbursement. Our customers are wanting us to be there on the journey with them, to participate, to assist, to be relevant as their health insurer when they actually use the product through the system, to go from a passive role, as health insurers have always done, to a much more active and proactive role. They want us to provide choices for them, for the solutions that they're looking for in terms of health and well-being. not mandated choices, not constrained choices, but to give them options that they can select pathways that mean much more value for them than what they currently have access to. And I guess overall we're saying that we want our members' experience of the health system to be far more improved and enhanced, and in a summary sense, to ensure that our members are better off, clearly better off, because they're with Medibank Private. Actually, it's always been in our name. And so if you look at our Medibank logo, the centre of the logo is the eye, the active eye. Maybe we should give it a sense of deeper meaning now. It's our purpose. It's the focus we have on our customers' well-being, to ensure that they are better off, that our purpose joins our name together, gives it a depth of meaning, and calls us to say, if that name means something, I have to deliver a purpose for the member. The brand has a deeper meaning than just the logo itself. So to make purpose start to happen, we need to work in our own backyard to help our members select the right products to make sure they're covered in the most adequate way in terms of the choices they have. We need to, if you like, lift the voice in terms of advocacy. Why don't we hear from one of our members now, Karen, and her, as she talks a little bit about her little daughter, Isabella, after she experienced a great service in Medibank's member liaison.
How did I feel when I first saw my baby? It's quite amazing, really, because I think, you're looking forward to seeing what they look like for so long. There's so many complications that can happen during childbirth, and I think, you just want them to come out safely, and you want to hear them cry, and you want to know that they're fine. So, it's a sense of relief when they do pop out, and you hear them crying. You kind of think they're all fine. In sometimes the state that you're in after you have the baby in the next couple of days, and you are emotional. I was actually quite surprised when the Medibank representative came in. I wasn't expecting that sort of assistance, I suppose. I mean, I think you're used to being in hospital and, you get all the medical assistance from the nurses and from the doctors and so on, but you don't expect that your health fund would, be sending somebody in to talk to you. It was all done very quickly, and, she was only around for about, 10 minutes or so, but I think, during that time, probably answered any questions that we had and just gave us a little bit of advice, and added Isabella onto our membership, and it was all done, so it's nice and easy. My husband Tony has been great throughout this process. He's actually been able to take a little bit of a break from work in the lead up to the actual delivery and also sort of post-delivery, and that's been really helpful for me. It's really beautiful, actually, sometimes at night, sometimes when you do a night feed, and it's just you and the baby, and everything's quiet around the house, and you can just give them like a real big cuddle. It's such a nice feeling. It's just lovely.
So what we see in the story there of our hospital liaison officer is the ability to engage our member while they're in the journey as they passage through the health system, and we can see the energy and the positive output of the quality of that engagement and what it means to the customer. Can we do that 3 million times over as an organisation? Can we transform ourselves to be that meaningful to all of our members, whether they're healthy or whether they're sick? I guess the imagery we're talking about here is to get out of the grandstand where we sit and observe the healthcare game, if you like, and start to engage in the game much more actively. And as you can see in the next diagram, the complexity of the health system, as you've seen in other versions of this, is one that our members find very difficult to deal with. They feel anxious about it, distressed, frightened, fearful. They're deep human emotions. And for an organisation to dare to be meaningful in that point of engagement, to provide direction, trust and assistance guidance that actually delivers great beneficial outcomes is a real powerful play for any corporation to take. So we believe that we can move through our purpose to create a sense of order in this chaotic system in the eyes of the member, to turn these squiggly lines, if you like, into more coherent pathways for customers to travel through by providing a clearer set of roadmaps and guidance for our members. But to do that, we need to transform the way we deliver our intent here as an organisation. It will require everybody to play this game. We need to lift our voice in terms of advocacy about the harm that occurs in the health system, the $2 billion of estimated costs that occur every year through adverse events, through drug interactions that go wrong, through falls in hospitals, through infection. We have made a commitment already. We're the first health fund to offer hospitals a series of incentives, and we've spent over $2 billion in the last couple of years, $2 million in the last couple of years, incentivating over 70 hospitals to participate in these programs. $2 billion would be a great incentive, wouldn't it? But that $2 billion worth of waste has to be tackled. How can we just passively receive an insured contribution income and not actively advocate for the improvement of quality and safety in the health system? And our ageing population is a wall of health need coming our way in the next generation, in the next 25 years. Almost 1 in 3, 30% of Australians will be over the age of 65 in just 25 years' time. That's an enormous chronic healthcare burden that will come into the Australian health system and into our own membership. It's there now, it'll just compound. So Medibank Private has to be relevant to people with chronic diseases, and we are today. We have member wellbeing programs today. Why don't we listen to Frank's story and what he thinks of these programs that we've offered him in his life.
I've been diabetic for 45 years, and I've looked after myself as well as I could in the circumstances, but after 45 years it's catching up with me a bit. I've had to have a quadruple bypass 2.5 years ago. I've got problems with my eyes, I've got problems with my feet, and a few other little aspects of my health aren't quite as good as I'd like them to be, and it's almost always caused by the diabetes. I have so many doctors. It certainly is important that you trust your medical people and that you have medical people who you can trust. The kind of support that I'm getting from the Medibank people is very valuable to me because it helps to maintain your positive attitude. They have a program called the Better Health Program. They simply ring to see that you are looking after yourself, to ensure that you have the knowledge that you need about your condition. Those girls who call me every 3 months have such a cheerful disposition. Obviously they have a great deal of knowledge, but the most important thing that they do for me, I think, is that they help maintain a positive attitude. And in diabetes, positive attitude is the be-all and end-all. If you're not positive about diabetes, it will kill you. I'm fortunate. I have 2 daughters, a lovely wife, and they've all got the right attitude to my problems. They help when they can, they advise when they can, and it's just an attitude thing. I'm not aware that any other health care organisation has such a program. They may, but the very fact that it exists means that they're not just looking for my money. So if they're doing something which is aimed positively at giving me a longer existence and a happier existence and a better existence, they're spending money that they probably don't need to spend. I've enjoyed a very good life. I look forward to several more years of enjoyment.
Frank says, why would Medibank pay for this member wellbeing program? Why would they do that? Well, the good news is that it's because it's great for Medibank. It's great for all of Medibank's members, and it's great for Frank. It's like a coin. This coin has two sides. Members are better off, and Medibank's better off, because the programs that we design and will design in the future are linked to an economic engine. And when you kick that engine around, it provides value for the company as well, and all of the members that depend on it, even those who didn't use the service. Because Frank's intervention, the service we offered him, lowered the cost burdens on the health fund and helped all members be better off, as well as Medibank Private as an organisation. So purpose has the ability to transform not only the experience that members have, but to make us a sustainable company in a highly regulated sector where the question mark of sustainability sits over the entire sector. Purpose is a breakthrough mission that makes us more durable than the frailty of the regulation that surrounds us. It's a very important mission that we must pursue. So we really can't opt for complacency. We can't level off at just being a really good company. We have a sense of our obligation. We know we can do more for our members, and we know that this company has more to offer in terms of its potential in the Australian health systems. And our members really do need an organisation that does have a heroic purpose for them. They do need somebody to be their advocate, to offer guided choice, to be with them through the journey of health, not just after the journey when the bills arrive. Now, this heroic purpose, on face value, looks only relevant to some parts of the people in our organisation, those who have a customer-facing role in the call centre or in our retail environment, maybe those who interact with us through online member services and the web. But what about the rest of the organisation? Does that mean we don't have a gig in this purpose? We're not part of the teamwork that delivers purpose? Wrong message. That's not what we're saying at all. Everybody's got a role to play in our purpose becoming a reality at Medibank Private. Our frontline teams need the support. We can't deliver purpose, these great programs, without people who will innovate services for our members in member wellbeing programs. Or we can't deliver these services and these benefits to members without an enabling technology, or great financial stewardship, or a great people and culture team that'll help us be trained and equipped and maintained to have the sort of sustainable energy that we need to deliver these great programs. And we need a senior leadership team that maintains their custodianship over purpose and doesn't let go of this very important mission that we're on to transform our business and the market that we're a part of. Now, every coach normally allocates and assigns to different players in a team different sort of roles to play to execute a great strategy to win the game. So we all will have different roles to play in the purpose journey. Not all of us will be delivering that final engagement with the customer in that heroic endgame role. But we are, if you like, part of the heroic purpose. We support that achievement being delivered, and that's important for all of us. So the hands-on commitment that we're suggesting today we need is for all of us to go hands-on. It's not just for those who actually deal with the customer. They won't be able to be sustained if you're not there in a support role, backing them up and making it happen. A few months ago, I climbed the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and I sort of knew how it was constructed. You know, the two arches were tied together by these large cables, and progressively the bridge was built, so it joined at the centre. You know, one arch, if you like, is a bit like our leadership and alignment strategy as an organisation, and the other arch is the world of our staff. And you know, you need to work for an organisation that has a sense of purpose and meaning and delivers satisfaction for you, that the work itself is one that has a degree of challenge and enjoyment as well as purpose and meaning. How do you get the two arches to align? Well, the role of understanding our purpose is the link. It aligns our efforts. that the way we treat our customers, the way we develop programs, because we have this common purpose, will get rid of the noise, the friction, the interference that occurs in companies that aren't coherently locked on to a direction as a company. Purpose will give us that direction. It'll help us to say yes and no to critical issues on the journey, rather than say yes to all and have a whole lot of non-value-adding baggage on that journey that will just slow us down. Will purpose be good for member retention? You bet it will. Will purpose be good to increase the switches that come to Medibank Private because of the word-of-mouth advocacy that comes from our members who share with their friends how great their experience has been with our company? It's unheard of in any other in the industry. Yeah, you bet it will. Will it have an impact on lowering the growth rate in benefit outlays? Well, yes, if our member health programs are linked to an economic engine, it sure will. Will our staff be much more motivated and receive much more personal value in their contribution in the company with purpose? I think they will. Many of our staff have said, we've been doing this for years, we just never had the permission, nor the tools and the backup we needed to make it much more consistent and effective. So you put all of those benefits together and you've got a sustainable power that's coming through the organisation in its own performance that makes it transform. It starts to look like a great company rather than just a good company. But can only ever be delivered if we're all into it together. Purpose is that kind of commitment that requires a whole organisation to say, that's what we're on about here at Medibank Private. That's our cause. That's why we exist. For our members to be clearly better off, and better off in a way that even the healthy ones who don't receive a health program are better off too, because of the economic deliverables that come for a more efficient engagement of the health system. Just want to move to the end of my introduction this morning with this video from a mother called Janelle and her young son Ben, a recipient of the Medibank Private Special Purpose Fund. Let's see what she thinks about our purpose.
When Ben was born, he was born with bladder atrophy and completely undiagnosed. It's an extremely rare condition that affects probably 1 in 40,000 births. It's basically a condition whereby the bladder, the kidneys, his pelvis is deformed, needing surgical reconstruction to give him a chance at living a somewhat normal life. So when Ben was 2, we discovered that there was a hospital that deals with these rare conditions, and that's at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland, in America. To know where we need to go and not to afford to be able to go is it's a tragic situation that any parent should be in. We had our, grandparents that were going to sell their house, my sister was going to, everyone was prepared to do whatever it took to get him there. My family flew down from Sydney and met me at work and gave me the letter from Medibank to say that due to their special purpose fund, apparently we fulfilled their criteria, and they had considered our case, and they believed that they would like to help. And I'll honestly say that was the biggest moment in my life. We had the first major orthopaedic surgery that commenced in June. We had orthopaedic pins coming out of his hips and he was in traction, so he was unable to move for 3 months in a bed. And as you can imagine, just from being still for that long, he had quite a lot of medical complications. He became quite ill. Having Medibank to deal with and to be able to ring up in tears and to be able to say things are going badly, Ben's health is really deteriorating, is there going to be a problem from your end? And there never was. There never was. They basically said, you do whatever you need to do. It was wonderful in the way that I had the ability to step back and Medibank was able to step in front of me and be able to give me the ability to concentrate on Ben while they deal with the hospital. To have that support that was just unwavering Ben needs to have this help, he needs to have this care, you're in the right place, we're here for you. That to me is just something I'll never forget. You know, Ben has been able to have the strength and the resilience that's needed to go through all of this. And he's had the faith in the doctors, and he's had his faith in me, and we've gone over there together as a team.
I had half my life with it.
Yep. But you know what? It's all, from here, it's all good, isn't it, mate? Yeah. I think to put it in perspective, you know, when a child's born, you know, it's the most wonderful moment of your life. And I think this would be a close second. To know that you're able to give your child the care that he needs is just something that you can't explain.
So obviously a very powerful story, and you can see the amount of potential passion that we can unlock when an organisation, like Janelle says, stepped in front of me and charted a pathway through a complex health system so that she could end up saving the life of her son. It's a real powerful demonstration of what we can be as an organisation when we endeavour to go on this purpose journey. Like a company with a heroic purpose, Medibank stepped in front of Janelle. So let's tune into that side of our potential as an organisation today. Let's get hands-on. Have a great day.
You can keep welcoming him. He's your COO. It's a wise career move. Bruce.
Morning, Andrew.
Welcome indeed.
Thank you.
So, first question I'd like to ask you is, what exactly does a COO do at Medibank?
That's a good question. I suppose...
Do you want me to ask you a different one?
Yeah, it would be good. I suppose it's interesting because I effectively touch all parts of the business and have the pleasure of seeing sometimes when all those parts of the business actually work at one and see the outcomes that we can produce as an organisation. So it's a privileged, busy role, lots of responsibility, but a very privileged one, I think.
Is it more enjoyable or stressful?
Enjoyable or stressful? Enjoyable.
Definitely? You thought about it for a moment.
No, it's definitely, yeah.
Now, I should point out that everybody who's coming up here today, we've got a general idea of the topics that we're going to cover, but what we say to everybody who's coming up, including Bruce, is we are not going to tell you the exact questions we're going to ask you on the day, because we actually want to see the way you think in order to answer the questions we ask. So they don't know what's coming, and you don't know this one's coming.
Thanks.
What's a good day from your point of view? When you get home at the end of the day and you think, yes, that was fantastic, you feel like a little celebration. We all have those days. Today was great. I want to celebrate just the fact that it was a day. What's happened on those days?
One of the key things would be, so a lot of my time is spent managing people and dealing with people issues. So just spontaneity, seeing two parts of the business get together and deliver something which I didn't expect that we could do. Often it could be right through to a member. Sometimes it might be other parts of the business where I sit back and think, crumbs, they're the sort of things that we can do consistently. That's pretty satisfying. Okay,
So the flip side, what's a bad day? What makes you want to kick the cupboard? Well, actually, what do you do on a bad day? Do you kick the cupboards?
No, I don't.
What do you do?
I get sometimes pretty emotional, but I bottle that in, more than likely too much sometimes, but I can manage that, I suppose.
What is a bad day from your point of view? What are the things that make you think that was a lousy day? Or do you just think, I'm on a COO salary, there is no such thing as a bad day?
No, not that part. I suppose the bad day, again, it will be people issues. So where ego gets in the way of good, sensible business decisions, that really upsets me. And so the people politics that come through that, where we limit the potential that we could deliver as an organisation, that upsets me and annoys me. When, apart from a lot of planning that goes on, things fall off the track and there's a lot of recovery that has to be done.
Now, you're one of the first people to respond to purpose inside the organisation. So you don't have enough authority to say we're definitely doing this, but you certainly have enough responsibility to say, right, I'm going to have to do something about it. What are your thoughts, just off the top of your head? How did you first respond to this notion of purpose?
I suppose to me it comes back to a very basic part of, I suppose, the human psyche, and that's about belief. To me, it's about, I've had a fairly, fortunate career where I've been in environments where you deal with raw human emotion quite often, working in hospitals and the like. And I've seen that when people believe what they're doing, the sort of things that they can deliver as a result of that. And to me, it was again an opportunity to actually lock on into a particular belief what this organisation could deliver. So it just resonated with me. Fortunately, coming out of that burning platform environment where you've got a common focus, to have something that you can ground yourself in and give you that focus is important to me personally. I need that. And having the opportunity to actually start thinking about it and seeing that this organisation take that opportunity was, just helped me along quite a lot.
Do you find purpose motivates you, or do you think it's a little bit hard to grasp in the early days?
Look, I think beliefs are hard to grasp sometimes. And you work through those because you see situations or get confronted with situations where sometimes your tendency is to do one particular thing and you are forced to sit back and think, well, in fact, is that the right thing to do? So, and you go through those, I suppose, personal trials and tribulations all the time. And I expect that we'll continue to go through those. It's about challenging yourself about what are the basis of your beliefs and how does that actually influence the way you behave.
One of the concerns I've heard you express a couple of times is that when you were at the Alfred Hospital, there was a major turnaround in the ability of the hospital to essentially provide the services that it could. And you said it was relatively easy to get everyone in the hospital on side because you were under so much pressure. It was faced with the possibility that the hospital would essentially be disbanded, go under. Yep. And that bound everyone together. Mm-hmm. But with purpose here at Medibank, there's not the same kind of threat. So it may be more difficult, and you've expressed concern about that.
Yeah, I think it's what George talked about before with the notion of complacency. There's no doubt that having a common enemy, having a burning platform, having a situation where the organisation is under significant stress, that it can give all people, regardless of what they do in an organisation, an opportunity to do something and focus on that. But when things are going well and the organisation keeps on beating its results of the prior year, and we've been fortunate enough to actually beat the results of other organisations that we compete against, you do sit back and you think, we're all busy. Do we actually need this stress and strain and making us try to stretch ourselves even further? Some of those things are hard.
But you have decided you want to go for it. I wonder, what are some of the things, some of the signs that you would see in the next few months as being indicative of a purpose starting to get traction? What sorts of things?
Look, to me, as we've seen today, it is so much about understanding the member and that, customer centricity. So walking around the business as I do and just seeing some engagements between people that I haven't seen before, which is about how can we actually make people's lives better, not only people that we serve as members, but actually people in the organisation. As many would know, I've just nearly finished what I called my retail road trip, and I've brought a lot of those learnings back to my fellows sitting at the table over there, the group executive, and it's just been great seeing how they've responded and seeing the opportunities that each one of them can make and the differences they can make to the people and how we operate the business. So seeing that continue without me talking about it would be a great indication that things are in fact resonating across the business and are changing.
That would mean that things have begun. Australian managers, and this is a generalisation by the way, I'm not talking specifically here about Medibank. Australian managers have been found to be very reticent to set high targets. We're wimps, essentially. We don't like to say, hey, look, we can go for that and we might be able to achieve it. There's something in our culture that says we don't like to do it. Just put that aside for a moment. Fantasise, if you like. Yep. What could Medibank achieve that would make members stupendously better off? What could we potentially do if everyone gets behind this notion of purpose for the members in, say, 5 to 10 years?
Look, this was real fantasy land. I suppose to me, having been in the health system and having the pleasure of working in the health system, I know that there are things that we could do as an organisation to make a radical difference to that. And health is so personal, as we've just seen in some of those videos. If we can have a situation where we are truly seen to be the first person or the first organisation that someone rings up when they've got a health crisis or a health need and help then find the best possible outcomes. That would be, I think they would be our advocates and our promoters forever. But that's hard. There's medical politics, there's legal politics, there's a whole lot of things. There's health system politics that prevent that. It's something I'd love to experience. I don't know if I will.
No, aim high, aim high.
I am high. Well, I'm just thinking about my age as opposed to tenure. So, you know, I've seen it at snapshots, you know, having worked at the coalface of clinical care, and I know that if you can find that as an organisation that we do, that would be, to me, nirvana. I'd love to think we get there.
And we'll need a lot of people to do it. Let's expand the conversation a little bit, get a couple more people up on stage, and we'd like to invite Heather Parkinson and Terry Snyder to come up and join us. Come on up. So the first thing I'll ask each of you as you make your way up and take a seat is your roles in HR and IT, roughly speaking, or specifically speaking. What exactly do you have responsibility for in your own terms, day in, day out?
I'll start off, if that's all right, Terry. In people and culture, we look after internal communications. We have business partners that work with the various parts of the business to support them in fulfilling their people responsibilities. So you heard Bruce say he spends most of his time dealing with people issues. We are a people business, and so we spend a lot of our time supporting people in doing that job.
Is HR all fuzzy?
Well, I like to think life's a bit fuzzy. It'd be a bit boring if it wasn't. So we certainly deal with people issues, and there's emotional issues in there as well.
Where's your focus most of the time? Is it on making sure that the support is there for everybody in the organisation to feel as, let me put this really crudely, as adjusted as we can possibly feel at work and a bit warm and fuzzy? Or is the focus more to drive a setup of people that can actually deliver profitable returns to the organisation?
It's both of those things. I guess, you know, certainly purpose has influenced the way we do things. We do things differently, and the internal communications side of things, it's involved in quite different activities. But ask that question again. I don't think I'm answering the question properly.
Oh, just in the two things that I would see HR, and this is from a very naive point of view. On the one hand, you've got to make sure everybody feels happy about coming to work. And, you know, we skip down the step and think when we wake up in the morning, thank heaven I'm going to work at Medibank Private today because Heather and the HR team have made it thus. Or on the other hand, I'm thinking those HR people, they just design the organisation to squeeze the hell out of me.
No, well, it's got to be both. And as I said, people have to understand.
So squeeze me happily.
Yeah. But what is it we're here for? I mean, you need to know you're just being happy, you know, it's not that fulfilling in its own right. So knowing, you know, what you're here for and, you know, knowing that you're here for an important purpose adds to the happiness. I guess it's more sustainable happiness than just that. So it's definitely about performance. It's about getting feedback on how you're going, all that sort of stuff. So.
And Terry, IT, is that the flip side? Is it all hard and harsh and...
I was going to say, it's probably the first time I've ever been clapped onto a stage if you come from IT. So.
The test will be whether they clap you off, I think, Terry.
Look, sometimes it is a hard gig. But no, look, IT, I think, deliver an important outcome for the company. I mean, we run the systems, we run the telecommunications, we run a lot of the infrastructure that enables the frontline staff and other staff to do their job. And when it works, it works very well and it delivers a great outcome. Sometimes it doesn't work, and that's when we have to sort of step in and make sure that we are behind the staff who are servicing the customer.
If I can ask you a very impertinent question. Why does IT not work so often? And I'm not talking specifically about this organisation here, I'm talking all over the place. To put it in context and to be fair, I have to acknowledge it works a hell of a lot. It does a computer every single day. It does so much of what we need. But there do seem to be a lot of problems. Is that purely to do with there being millions upon millions upon millions of lines of code?
Yeah, look, the connection, if you think about the connection of various components to deliver an IT solution, it is a lot of connection points, you know, from just a simple thing like a staff member in a retail centre in Queensland or Brisbane, by the time it comes through all the connection points into Medibank in the data centre, then back out to that staffing, but it goes through lots of connection points. And sometimes those connection points break down and it provides an adverse outcome. But I'd have to say in 99% of the time they work, and they work very well.
Now, Heather's already mentioned a couple of times the way purpose can align what you're doing with your day-to-day work. I'm interested to know what each of you is going to change as a result of having this notion of purpose sitting over the organisation.
Maybe.
Have you identified, or have you already identified at the senior level things that you really need to fix, where you look around and you say that is not working if we put it through the filter of purpose, or you're not up to that point yet?
For the IT leadership team, one of the things that we're working on is the number of outages. It's funny you should start with that, the number of outages. For this company, we have a large number of outages. It was about 300 last year, and which clearly means that there are 300 instances where our staff couldn't serve the customer. The system was down, or there was a problem, or there was something that shouldn't have worked the way it did. And as the leadership team, the IT team have stepped up and they said, look, that's just not good enough. We're going to reduce that by 30% this year. We've got a target. We've set a target for ourselves that's going to come down to 200. And then the following year, it's going to drop again by 30%. So for us, so that our frontline staff can service the customer, we're tackling the whole thing about outages so we can give a better service proposition.
How does that make members clearly better off?
Well, it's a lot easier for our staff to be able to interact with our members when they actually have the tools available to them. So they have the tools, they have the phones work, the screens work, the applications work. So the customer gets a better experience. When those things don't work, it's very problematic.
Heather?
I guess the key thing for us, if we're going to be successful with purpose, is our staff have to be engaged. So not just satisfied and not just happy, but really engaged with what they're doing and doing what they do to the best of their ability. So all the things we do in people and culture add up to that, about people being paid effectively, about having an understanding of what their goals are and so on, about not being frustrated by the IT systems and not being frustrated by the dealings they have with other departments. So we've got to get all that sort of stuff right. People have got to feel good about working for Medibank if they're going to be able to make our customers feel better off. So it's, we have too high a turnover, and that's a reflection of how well engaged our staff are. I'm sure a lot of the people here feel very engaged, but I know that some don't. So that's got to change.
Bruce?
Okay, didn't ask you to ask me.
I did.
Just sitting here, just listening. I suppose to me it will be about, with the sort of role that I have, is consistency of behaviour. So, if I'm a leadership position, most of the things that I'm responsible for are done by other people. I've been going through a process of developing a new team, and if I can give them a clear message and clear vision of what needs to be delivered and why we're doing it, and then be consistent with the way that I engage with them, either individually or collectively, then I think that's an important part of my role, and helping them and deliver the things we're trying to deliver as an organisation. And sometimes that's challenging because we do have situations where you like to grab someone around the neck or do some things, and people know that I'm usually pretty focused about those sort of things. So
grabbing people around the neck.
Yeah, sometimes. So I've got to be really consistent, in my behaviour and my engagement.
In just a moment, we're going to get a couple of money people up here, people who look at the numbers very closely. Before they come up, I want to put you three on the spot and ask you, because this is a question I think we all ask to some degree or another, how do we measure this purpose stuff? How do I, when I'm doing my job each day, I'm told I should be able to measure what I do in order to have an impact on what goes on around me. How can I possibly measure a purpose?
So for me, I suppose, it's one of the things that George talked about before. It's the engagement aspect. So again, I cover a large part of the business. I can measure it by the sort of conversations and things I am seeing. So if I can see that staff understand the issues, understand where we're trying to deliver, and the engagement is a positive one, then I can see that we're moving forward. And that's I suppose, a fortunate position because I can have a lot of those engagements. I can equally see if some of the conversations we're having aren't consistent with that, and I sit back and scratch my head and think, now, why in the hell is that going on? Haven't we been consistent in the message that we've conveyed?
So purpose for me is those stories, lots of those stories where staff have really focused on doing that extra little bit. And it's going to be hundreds of these stories. And when we get hundreds of these stories, we know we're well on the journey.
Okay, well, let's expand the discussion and let's get stuck into the financial stuff as well. To help us do that, would you please welcome Michael Samuels and Tony Jones up to the stage. So Michael and Tony, if you could explain your roles just in a couple of sentences to everyone in the audience.
Okay, so I can kick off. I guess the core part of my role is all about, providing financial oversight for the whole of the business of Medibank, as well as having a team of people that attend to all our corporate and retail property needs. We've got a very large claims processing division that's processing all the members' claims on behalf of members and hospitals. And certainly a large part of my time invested over the last 12 months in our BSR program, being a business sponsor for our core new systems replacement program.
Tony?
I'm responsible for helping the organisation get its strategy together and the corporate development side, and we go into other things related to our business, and also in relation to the public affairs, so the external communications, if you like. And to the extent that the sale process and privatisation proceeds, I'm responsible for managing our process through that as well. So
money, strategy, external relations, all of this all mixed up. You can't possibly be taken in by this purpose stuff.
Well, I'm actually an old investment banker, and purpose in investment banking was pretty simple. It was pretty much about the next deal and making money. So we're not supposed to get this stuff, I guess. But
so do you get it?
I do. When the process started, I guess I was sceptical, but I sort of sat back and looked at it and thought, okay, this is a new world that that I've never understood a lot about, but I get it now. And the fascinating thing I've found about it, and the good thing about the way I think we've handled it amongst the group exec, is everyone gets it in their own way. For me, it was very much a personal journey of why do you go to work? I used to have a motivation that was driven on a different set of beliefs and behaviours. But now when you see stories like that with that kid up there, sure, we can't give everybody lots and lots of money, but you see that kind of story and it becomes very personal about what you actually go to work and the team you're part of and what you're trying to achieve.
For me, it was right at the beginning when we started to talk about it, because I've been around longer than I like to own up to these days, and I've worked in a lot of organisations that start talking about vision and values and behaviours and all that stuff, and I've seen it done well and not so well, and particularly not done well where people aren't really committed to it and it doesn't really resonate in the organisation. So I must admit I reserved judgment for a little while to see, are we really serious about it? Are we going to stick with it? And some of the moments for me when I really realised, I guess I went to New South Wales and was speaking to some retail centre managers who might be some in the room here, who were there that day, and they said to me, we know this. It's good to see you finally getting on the bus. So it really resonates for us as an organisation. Who can't relate to that stuff? And I've seen my colleagues, we've had debate about it internally, but I've seen my colleagues all sort of coming together on it, and I see us committed to it. So.
What have the debates been about? What have been the most heated moments in the executive team when it's been, how are we going to make this into purpose? Will purpose really survive this hurdle?
I think part of it has been, it's a journey and it's an iteration, if you like. So certainly I guess there was some dialogue in the early days of the conversation that was really challenging ourselves to say, so are we really trying to retrofit this dialogue back to what we do now? Or is this truly about mapping out a pathway for the future, being quite clear about what our role and what's the DNA of the organisation that's going to guide its future behaviour, and from that space, what are we truly going to change? So I think we're in that journey, but certainly early on, we had a lot of debates about is it just a nice set of words that's just not much more than confirming what we do already, or is it truly about taking the organisation into a different place?
We've also had a chat about how do we make money out of this. We can't afford to do all this if the organisation
do you mean you have a chat about specifically how do we make money out of the purpose?
Not so much how do you make money out of purpose, it's about how do you build a long-term, sustainably successful organisation. And to do that, the organisation has to have an economic platform that does that off. So I was just trying to understand, does this mean we hand out all our money? Or does this mean there are rules? Or just the debates about, what does that mean for us?
One of the interesting things that we had, was the issue of trust. So, as we've seen, and as I think Tony mentioned, and we had some pretty lively debates, so did it mean that we just have, everyone has a discretion to have $1,000 or $10,000 ex gratia payments because we know that if we give members money, it will make them better off. And we had some interesting debates about that one. And it came back to the issue of, do we trust our people? Are they smart enough to understand that that's not what we're talking about? We're actually talking about trying to develop a different direction for the business. And that tested some of us, I think, to realise that we do have a mature group of people and understand it. And if we're clear in our messaging and the vision that we wish to present, then they're smart enough to understand. And as Heather said, a lot of them are doing this anyway, to operate in the environment that we have to operate to make the business successful.
It's an interesting question. How many bends can we afford? Because that story obviously is exceptionally moving. We would all love to be able to make that kind of difference to individual lives. But when you look at it, we can't afford to. We don't have that kind of money available for everyone. How does purpose help us make those sorts of decisions? At what point in everybody in this room making some contribution, should we be thinking about, well, if we all get this right, we'll have more money available for more bends? Or is the right place to focus more, hey, look, it's nice when it happens, we can't do that every day, we've just got to accept it. What little changes? From your point of view?
I think the interesting thing for us was that it was part of the decision-making process that we went through. So we'll hear about some of the campaigns, and one of them, and George has spoken at a number of events through the country about our role in quality and safety and advocating on behalf of our members. The thing that we had for Ben, and we've had decisions similar to Ben where the outcome has not been funding the particular treatment. We had to be confident in ourselves that we had the capability of making some of those decisions by having the right resources and the right capabilities in the business. So it meant if we didn't have them, we had to bring those sort of resources in and have the confidence that we make those decisions, we make the right one. Because as you said, you can make all those decisions based on emotion and we'll go out the back door and we won't. Not all of our members will be better off. A few of them will be, but not all of them.
And I think it's about sustainability of the business. So I think, we've got the responsibility to make sure that what we're doing is sustainable. And so there's always that balance between how many bends do we want to have. But if we're successful in truly, ultimately making members the advocate for our business, because that's their experience, that's what they're telling themselves and their friends. Whilst we're able to grow this business, we can afford a lot more bends. And I think Medibank's had an experience where it's let members down. So if I go back to 2000, 2001, that Medibank got itself in a lot of financial strife. The series of actions that were required to redress the organisation actually hurt members a lot. Every member got a series of really high price increases. We made them pay to go to same-day events in hospitals. So there are a range of actions that Medibank was required to take, principally to survive as a business, because that balance had got out of whack. And it's only in the last couple of years that we've been in the fortunate situation of having the luxury of all those metrics running the right way. We're growing the business, growing the bottom line, and it's sustainable. And whilst we continue to manage that pathway, we can afford more and more bends. But it's about
the more powerful you are, the more you can do. Is that true?
Yes, it certainly is. I think, we look at our sector, we're at all-time high levels of profitability at the moment. We know the government sets the rate increases. The future of economic growth of the business, if you like, has got to come from making more members happy and more non-members happy to come to us, and to make sure we're managing our costs well. And I think that's important. I think the really good thing about this for me, from a strategy perspective, if you like, thinking through that, is that we're going to succeed through the customer. If our customers are happy, they're all coming to us, then it gives us great staff engagement. The customers are happy, staff are engaged. It means we can actually build better economic value in the business for the shareholder, but it's through the eyes of the customer and making sure the customer's happy that we build that sustainable flywheel, if you like.
And if we get really big and really strong, is there the potential that this particular organisation, Medibank, will be able to take on the unbreakables, the AMA, for example, the bigger hospitals, and to actually give them an accountability, if you like, beyond their own view of medicine that would be in the interest of members? Will we ever be strong enough and powerful enough to take them on in the interests of our members, to make our members clearly better off?
Well, certainly one of the attractions of me being in this business was for that reason. So I think Medibank is of the right size and the right positioning within the broader community and the health sector to change the health system. It was one of the things that we talked about 12 months ago in our purpose journey, the notion of being heroic. And the heroism is not only what we do on a day-to-day basis, but what actually we can do in the whole system. It takes time. It takes, as you said, resilience. Many have tried and failed, and it's being smart enough to pick your quarry and go for it.
And that's now locked onto the purpose of making members clearly better off. I want to ask you now, you've all got a range of experience at very senior levels in a range of organisations. I've written them down here. We've got Main Group, Deutsche Bank, Coles Myer, ANZ and the Alfred Hospital, all represented here on stage in senior roles. What, from your views of the cultures of those organisations, does Medibank have to change internally?
I'm the newest person to the GE. One of the first comment to say is one of the strongest attractors for me to join Medibank Private was in fact the discussions I had with George and the leadership team around purpose. I came from ANZ. ANZ has a very strong brand, I think, in the marketplace. But I actually think that the passion and the feeling that I got when I, 2 months ago or 3 months ago when we had discussions about me joining Medibank Private, the passion and the discussion I had from this team and George was actually what convinced me to join the company. The other part of, coming back to your question, there is that I think this organisation's got to have a belief. You know, you've got to believe in yourself. It's very hard to be a top-line athlete or a top-line anything if you don't believe. And I think the biggest challenge this company has is you've got to believe. And once you believe, then there's nothing that can stop us.
Other views?
Sorry, yeah.
I think part of it's about clarity as well. Part of it's about being clear about, without fixing all the points, because it is a journey, mapping out that pathway about how we intend to grow and diversify the business and how that links quite directly to our overarching purpose. And then through that journey, I guess, as part of a leadership team, just making sure that there's much greater consistency in the words and the actions marrying up together. That's the evidence, because the words are easy, but when we're back in the workplace and it's as busy as all get out and things happen as they do, I think that's really the ultimate test about being clear and convincing people about whether things have really changed. So I think that's a responsibility that we all carry back of us every day of the week back in the office. And so sitting in a forum like this, it's quite easy to get hooked into the message and the purpose, but next week when something happens and it's busy as all get out, just being clear about what we're clear about, trusting each other and the words and the actions marrying up all the time.
And we'll help people in this room with that quite a bit before we get to the end of the day, by the way. Tony,
yeah, I think,
in what ways can we be more like an investment bank?
Well, it's actually funny you say it. There are actually quite a few parallels in relation to purpose, strangely enough, in that in investment banking, it's all about making sure the frontline people who are dealing with the customers and doing the deals actually have all the support in the world, because you have to be cleverer, smarter, faster and more aggressive than the next investment bank to get there. And it's about being great at client relationships, and it's about being great technically. And you get all the support from the investment banking organisations, because if they don't win that battle with the other investment banks, they die. And the parallel I bring to Medibank is that when I went out and saw the front line when I first joined, I had a number of people talk about Medibank almost in the third person, as in we, some people in the front line were saying, like they were almost with the member, and Medibank was the organisation that helped them with the member. And it resonated with me in relation to banking, because it meant that there was really a huge obligation on the monolith we've got at 700 Collins Street to get the best products and services and the best support in place for those people dealing with the customers. And if we can do that, then the frontline staff we have will do a fantastic job, because they really believe in what they're doing and selling, because we'll be creating the good stuff to help them.
Let me just suspend the conversation there and ask a very, very ugly question. We've heard already, it's come up from the front line at this organisation, that a lot of people at the front line feel that they've been doing this purpose stuff for a long time. We're looking after the members. We're trying to make it work for them every day. There's a complaint coming from there that there's not the support in place to make it happen for them. I want to ask you very directly, is middle management in this organisation switched on enough to make this happen and to support the people at the front line to do it for the members? Do we need to have a bit of a shake-up, if you like, the responsibility resting with everybody in this room to do more to make things move faster for them?
It's an interesting question. So I think I sit here and look at the hands on the table, and I was reflecting on the question that you asked about, what parts of the culture that I think need to be changed. There have been times in our recent history where others have looked at others to do the work for them, and sometimes it's been not only the middle management, but it could have been the senior managers of saying, well, I hear all that, but I'm going to leave it to others to do. And they sit back and almost wait for them to trip up, expecting them to trip up, and sometimes even expecting them to change direction. And that's a disappointing thing sometimes when those sort of things happen. So it is a challenge. It's a challenge amongst ourselves, and it's a challenge at all levels of the organisation to recognise that the success can only happen if we all pitch in and not wait for others to do it. So, I think that there are some of those risks. We're not Robinson Crusoe there. Part of our role is to actually communicate and support the middle managers because they ultimately the ones that are the closest to the front line. So, I think that we've experienced that, I think, in our own journey over the last couple of years.
I think one of the things we've got to get right, but it's the case in most companies, and most companies don't get it right, are just some of those ways we behave day to day, the way we behave to each other. One of the things that really we've got to be wary of, and you've all got to be wary of, is that people don't tell us stuff they'd like to tell us. They're sometimes not honest with us because they're not sure what we're going to think about it. I've had that own personal experience in my own team where I wasn't getting some feedback that I needed to have. And, you've got to be open to that feedback to make sure that people give it to you and then do something with it when you get it. So, I've had a few aha moments since I've been with Medibank. So we've all got to think about that. We've all got managers, and we are, except for George. You've even got managers, George, haven't you, with the board?
Answerable to no one.
And we all manage people really in this room, or certainly in positions where we influence people significantly. And just getting those relationships right, being honest with each other, being open to feedback, open to change and so on. As I said, not many organisations get it right, but we've been working as a team ourselves on our own relationships and being honest with each other. But then once we had the debate, then not criticising each other and moving on together, or if we've got an issue, make sure we do have it out, and having had it out, then let's move together and not undermine ourselves. So all those basic things I think we've got to get right.
One of the issues that we all have out day to day, I just want to move slightly off track from purpose for just a moment. By the end of the day, we are very unashamedly going to ask every single person in this room to take on some more work, to take on responsibility for actually shifting something, for making a change in the way you do things. That's absolutely necessary in every organisation in this competitive world. It's where work pressure comes from. Ultimately, it's to make members clearly better off. What I want to ask the five of you on stage is, you're all at a pretty senior executive level. You've got to struggle with work-life balance as much as anyone on this planet. What do you do about it? So we won't worry about purpose for the moment. What do you do to get work-life balance as right as you possibly can?
Don't ask me. I'm the worst example.
I was going to say, don't ask me this week.
I think it's about being more conscious of it. So I think I've just been overseas for 4 weeks, and I think...
work or play?
Call it study, so work, not holidaying, trust me. But I think one of the... And the course that I did goes down this track in a fairly heavy sort of sense, and I think they challenge you quite significantly about the way you manage yourself, but also your work-life balance on a whole range of issues. But I think part of it's about having more and more confidence in the people in this room to delegate and let them get on with the business of running the organisation at Medibank. So, my life at work is a really busy workload, but then I can go away for 4 weeks quite effectively and put people in charge and be quite comfortable about the fact that the place runs fine. And so I think the challenge is coming back into the workplace and not grabbing all that back. That creates a bit more space to put more energy into subject matters like today. So I think that's probably a challenge that we all wear, along with just challenging the why we do what we do. Because I think one of the dangers, in the purpose journey is thinking that it's all about the new, whereas in fact there's some quite rudimentary daily processes and procedures that we go through that really stand in the way of giving members a better experience. That part of your previous question for me is about giving people permission to challenge elements of those processes, but creating the time to do it, because part of the purpose clarity for me is about, I guess, realigning the priorities in the business and being clear about what's important and what's not.
I'm going to come back specifically to to-dos in just a moment. If we can run along though, I just want to know, in a few words, in a couple of sentences maybe, what do you like to do when you're not at work?
Chase children.
Chase children. How old are the children you chase?
0 to 7.
How many?
4.
Ooh, that's a lot of chasing.
Yes, I actually haven't joined Medibank yet. That happens next week after the last procedure. I would have hurt the organisation too much, so. So Booper's copped it all. So.
Michael?
So I've got 3 kids, an 18-year-old who's just completing her BCE exams, a 16-year-old who's perpetually, which is good news, trying to drag me out on the golf course, which is a passion of mine outside of work, and a 13-year-old who, again, starting to play golf, but they're all sports inclined, so when I'm not in the workplace, I maximise the time that I've got with the family.
What's your favourite sport?
I'm a golfer.
Yeah, you've influenced your daughters, haven't you? Terry?
I have 2 children, a daughter who's 15 and a half and a son who's 13 and a half, so I'm the bus driver and a big part of moving them around and getting there from A to B. When I'm not doing that, what I enjoy is eating out, and I play a reasonable game of squash.
Heather?
I've got 2 daughters, a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old going on 28, as I tell people. And yeah, I just love spending time with them. I loved it when they were babies, but every stage is fantastic. So having fun with them. And we do a lot of family stuff together. We, in the winter time, spend a lot of time skiing together. So I guess that's how I manage work-life balance, is we do a lot of stuff together as a family when I'm not at work. And sometimes they come into the workplace too. A lot of people here have met my daughters.
It's a good thing.
So, yeah.
Bruce?
So I chase waves. So I surf, and I've got
How often do you get to surf?
usually every weekend.
That's pretty good.
So so I've got 2 kids, 20-year-old and 18-year-old. So I'm at that great part of my life where I'm just about to check out of the schools and thinking about downsizing the house and moving down the beach. And fortunately, both of my kids surf with me, and so we've spent a lot of time in water, either below it or above it. So that's the passion.
Very obviously, everybody in this room is essentially representative of the members that we want to make better off, us and our families, and they just happen to be a lot of other families out there that we're trying to do this for in meeting the purpose. So what I want now is just 1 or 2 to-dos, really simple things, straightforward things. They might be with huge ultimate scope or with tiny day-to-day, just one little thing. What are the to-dos that you have in mind? It doesn't have to be a finalised list, just 1 or 2 things that you can do from tomorrow morning that will align your particular role more directly with purpose.
Okay, he's thinking again. I suppose, let me think. 2 things that would come to mind. One would be to remove some clutter, so that I've got time to concentrate what needs to be done and provide the direction that needs to be done. And part of that comes to the point that Michael mentioned, delegation. So I've got a new team, and some of them have told me to push out a bit, step back a bit, and let them get on with running their business, and I need to do that so I can have more clear thinking time. So that would be one of the things.
That's very open.
The second one, I suppose part of it would be managing upwards. So I think we've got a journey to take our board through this. So a number of us here have a lot of engagement with the board. We've got some new directors, and I think that just as we spend a lot of time down here, we've got to make sure that our governors, so to speak, are on the same journey with us. And I think that's a collective role that we have. It's certainly one that George and I have directly. So that would be something I'd like to do and see change.
Thank you. Both of those were strikingly honest. Heather?
I guess we've already got a lot of stuff underway around purpose, around helping people to understand what it means. Today was about that, and my team have been very involved in that. Today, looking at what do we need to do differently, so starting that dialogue in the organisation. But closer to home, I guess it's making sure, a lot of my team are here today, making sure that when we go back, if they've got any doubts or questions, that we're open and we talk about all of that and get it all out in the open, and so that we can work effectively as a team.
I think the two things are, the first thing is the IT and the business engagement. One area that I have to really work on is to get that to work better. The IT folk and the business need to have a mature relationship and a mature conversation. And the other one is that the IT people are a number of steps removed from really the customer, and I need to find a way of getting the IT staff to actually be able to go out and visit and participate in some way, shape or form with the member experience, and get them more involved in the front office parts of the business, because that disconnection takes away some of their energy. And if I can get them connected and they can see the passion that's obvious in the front office part of the business, then they'll get that passion as well.
Michael?
So for me, it's, I guess, part of what I've already said, just being clear about, I guess, giving more empowerment to the people that work for me, remove some of that clutter off my desk and give them, I guess, more latitude to do what they need to do, and use that time personally to just spend more time through my team pushing this message. Because it'd be fair to say that there's a range of what I'll loosely call the back office functions that have had some challenges in resonating with the words in the journey, because I've got a lot of people who never touch a member anytime, anywhere. But it's more, spend more time working through this dialogue, making sure where they sit in the supply chain and the things we can do that will make a difference.
Yep. Tony?
For me, in the strategy side, we're doing a bit of work at the moment thinking about the long-term strategy, and it clearly puts customers at the front of that. It's about working out what the customers need now, what they might want to need in the future, and that's driving the whole process for that. It's also about, with the public affairs side, that we've got the external communications, that as we talk to media and those kind of outlets, that we're talking through the eyes of the member, if you like. Why are we doing things? What's our response? It's about the member. And obviously that links to the privatisation kind of discussion that we have been and will continue to be very forthright in putting the views of making sure if any sale does go ahead that the interests of our members are really well considered in that process.
All right, well, thank you all for your time. Please thank Tony, Michael, Terry, Heather and Bruce. He knows one heck of a lot about purpose. Would you please welcome Nikos to the stage?
First of all, I must tell you, I am moved by Ben. It's a great tribute to the responsibility and achievements of this organization already. Second, I must tell you that I'm really impressed by the progress that I have seen in the 12 months since I had the honor to meet Medibank, your top management, and join you on this journey of purpose. At the same time, I'm working with 6 great companies around the world, and a lot of my Buzalan and Panthea colleagues are working with others. And you have every reason to be proud of your achievements and to stay the course, because the progress that I have seen in the last 12 months has been just enormous. I want to speak for 30 or 45 minutes, during which I want you to do what you do best as an organization, from what we have seen already, is to assume responsibility and step in front of any miscommunication problems that might arise. Your top management asked me to take you back to Purpose 101, to share with you what I shared with them when we met 12 months ago. Some of the material is not easy, but let us be all responsible to understand it. So at any point, I'm interruptible by anybody for any reason, including to be told that my Greek accent is a little bit too much for you guys. So don't hesitate to interrupt me. The issue is to have a dialogue, not a one-way transmission. And to go a little bit, take a step backwards now from the excitement of the achievements and of the panel, and go back into the fundamentals of what purpose is and what it does for organizations, not just Medibank, but every organization. Here are the 4 modules, if you want, the 4 parts of what I'm going to talk to you about. What purpose is and what purpose is not. The 4 kinds of purposes. Why purpose is the bridge between good to great. And what is this notion of campaigns? I'm telling you up front that campaigns is the topic of my next book. And campaigns is about doing what you are doing already with your 4 campaigns, turning purpose into action. This is one of my favorite jokes that I have been working on this topic since I was 25, which makes for 30 solid years already. And on my way back to England from my first trip to Australia, I opened the Qantas travel magazine, and I found this incredible quote. I had not found it until I came to Australia, which was a signal, I suppose, from God that this was a land of purpose. Nietzsche said, one of the great German philosophers, that he who has strong enough of an answer to the question of why can bear almost anyhow. Tell people why, and they will bear up with every how. Or better yet, tell people why, and they will figure out the how themselves. Emerson, one of the great Americans, put it in a different way. He said, the person who knows how will always have a job. The person who knows why will always be his boss. A lot of what I'm saying has been seen as the antithesis of what a great thinker called Ram Charan has written about execution. It's not that execution is not important. I agree with Ram. Execution is very important. But unless you know why you're executing, execution will suffer. Execution will not be perfect. Execution will not be competitive. Execution by itself will not be able to provide you with a sustainable competitive advantage. Purpose is a reason for doing something in and of itself. You are doing something with a purpose when it is worth doing by itself, irrespective of any other considerations. It is the moral DNA of the organization. Today, we had a great exposure to the great DNA, moral DNA of this organization. And purpose relates people. What I love from your panel is that we have 5 people there, each of whom had a different definition of purpose, was relating to Medibank through their own perspective on purpose. Purpose is not a vision, because a vision, as especially is seen in America, is one picture drawn by the CEO that everybody has to keep on the back of their minds. No, with purpose, you have different perceptions of the same destination. You don't necessarily have the same picture given to you by somebody else. Every time I meet a CEO who tells me, this is my vision and I want the organization to follow it, I ask a question that is often uncomfortable. I say, this is your vision. Why should anybody else follow it? I very much prefer the state of play where you are in a journey to discover individually and then collectively the purpose of Medibank. Because this is sustainable. It is shared by everybody. It is not just George's vision. It is everybody's destination, and everybody can see his or her future within Medibank and beyond that by serving a higher purpose that he or she espouses out of his or her free will. Purpose is not even social responsibility. Social responsibility is doing whatever you do in the morning and trying to deal with your guilt feelings in the evening. Purpose is about doing well while you're doing good. Purpose is helping Ben, but quite frankly, putting the economic engine into such a performance level that you can help 10 Bens into the future. Purpose is about doing well while you're doing good. Don't forget that. Otherwise, we're talking about moralizing or mere talking. This is not about talking. This is about winning. This is about winning in the workplace and in the marketplace. And every win in the marketplace can help for further investments in the workplace and vice versa. Purpose is about enduring advantage. It is not about just being nice. Everybody can be nice, although none of us is always nice. The challenge is much higher. The barrier that we're talking about is much higher. The barrier that you're talking about is how to make a difference. How to make a difference for your members, for Australia, and if we're all lucky and successful enough, to set a model for the world. If Australia, Medibank for that matter, cannot make a difference in this, what's the other area in which a difference can be made? Healthcare, how we pay for it, how the system is organized, how the inefficiencies are taken out, is a global challenge. There is no universal model as yet. Believe it or not, you are in the race for defining one. And believe it or not, and I don't mean to flatter you, I mean to challenge you, you are not doing bad in that race. The world needs victories in this area because the population is going to get older and older and needs to sustain itself to be productive and healthy for as long as possible so we don't create global crises in addition to the ones we are enjoying these days. In the last 30 years that I studied the subject, I came to the conclusion that there has never been a great company without a purpose. As a matter of fact, I would have never written the book, Purpose. I would have been given the chance to write the book if Jim Collins, who wrote The Build to Last, had delivered on his promise on his penultimate page to write a book about purpose. Jim made a tremendous contribution to the business literature by focusing on values. But then as he was writing the epilogue, he said, well, values are important, but the real question is which values? There must be a core value in every company. There must be a purpose. I'm going to write a book about it. Well, he got busy with other things, and this was my good luck. I had the chance to write my book. And then I discovered, as I was putting pen to paper to really come to grips to it, that there are moral traditions that bestow on us a sense of purpose. And not all of those moral traditions are compatible with competitiveness. For instance, equality is not. For many years, in most parts of the world, we had utilities, public utilities that were supposed to serve every client the same way, charge the same rate. The moment any of those utilities got privatized, in came those consultants and they said, you have to segment your clients and serve your best clients better. The moment you segment your clients, equality goes out of the window. Equality and competitiveness are unfortunately not compatible. And this is a very tough message, but there's a message that anybody who is in business has to live with. But there are moral traditions, there are definitions of good, and that's what a moral tradition is supposed to deliver, a definition of good, that allow a company to do well while it's doing good. And there are four. One is discovery, the pursuit of the new. Discovery, the pursuit of discovery, the pursuit of the new for its own sake and at all costs is the DNA of Sony. The quote for its founder speaks for itself. Another great moral tradition is that of excellence, that says good is when you define what is good, the setting of the standards. For Warren Buffett, this is what it's all about. Warren was not very much impressed by the dot-com revolution because it was not building up, it was not understood to him. For Walmart, it was an unbeatable company. It's still doing well, but it's not a great company because they follow the strategy of cutting costs that is incompatible with being altruistic, at least to your employees. Last but not least, and very material, I think, to your discussion, we have the heroic tradition. And who is the hero? The hero is the person who steps in front of the problem and assumes responsibility for a total solution that is the global paradigm. There's a marvelous part of Henry Ford's memoirs, and I think Henry Ford in the previous generation and Bill Gates in this generation are the primary examples of this moral tradition. We might disagree with their morality, but they do have a morality. Where Henry Ford said, I was tired and I felt embarrassed as a teenager, seeing my mother having to lift her long dress every Sunday morning and fight the wet roads to go to church. I decided to do something about it. And the T-car, the car that he designed for the American farmer, was the response to that challenge that he put for himself when he was a teenager. He changed the world. Henry Ford changed the world. He changed the world because by proposing his machine as the solution, his solution as the global solution, made governments rethink their priorities. A lot of the government priorities these days is to serve Henry Ford's dream by building roads. But he also helped the world get out of a lot of diseases. The biggest source of disease before Henry Ford's time were animals that were living in the cities to help solve the transportation needs. So these are the four moral traditions that define what is good. And without skipping a course and going to the most advanced one, each of us take this as given for a moment. Each of us form a character that is more disposed towards one of those 4 definitions of good. Let us answer a hypothetical question. Somebody raises their hand and says, is this a Medibank thing, this purpose thing? Is this something that George just thought about and we all have to work on? Or real people are also dealing with it? As I told you at the beginning, I don't believe there is a business institution, a company that has crossed the bridge between good to great, that did not have a purpose and align what it's doing to its purpose. Yesterday, we had lunch with 9 CEOs from Melbourne, and one of them impressed me very much. He knew more about purpose probably than I did, because he said the following. He said, I used to be the head of that insurance company, which was only $25 million. And we used to say that we are for excellence in service. And I could not get engagement. I could not get any differentiation. I just had a problem. And I worked very hard, and he was obviously heading an organization that was insuring against accidents, to come up with a purpose that would resonate and would help me grow the business. And finally, we did, he said. It took us years. The purpose of the company was to remove the stress from the client. But when we came up with that, then we sat down and we realized the do's and the don'ts. And we realized that the first thing we had to change was that we couldn't have an answering machine answering calls from clients when they had an accident. Because answering machines add to stress. They don't take stress away. And we did 100+ things like that to align our actions with our purpose. And then we enjoyed the benefits of a great IPO of 1.5 billion Australian dollars. The problem I had, he said, as a CEO, was that the numbers, and we'll talk about the numbers in a second, came at the end. I could see the promised land of the numbers, but I could not show the people numbers in the meantime to sustain their faith and their commitment to the purpose we had chosen. This is a challenge, and we will see under the title of campaigns how we'll deal with that. But coming back to the chart, from BMW to ExxonMobil to Microsoft to GE to IBM, all these companies had a purpose and had aligned themselves to the purpose when they were successful. This does not mean that they did not lose their purpose at some point. There was another gentleman yesterday who is the head of IBM Australia, and we had a good discussion about IBM. IBM was in discovery when the senior Watson took it over. Then they were so successful, like the Walmart successors, abandoned discovery. They said, well, no, we're not in discovery. We're not the geeks. We are the blue suit guys. We wear our blue suit. We look like executives. Executives will buy from us. It didn't work out this way. They strove for something that they could not compete with. They became too official for their own good. And in came Bill Gates and ate their lunch. But eventually they went back to discovery. And they did much better. And they have to watch it because size and discovery are not that much compatible. But for the periods of their lives, of their corporate lives, that they stuck to their purpose, they have been extremely successful. And purpose is not forever, by the way. Purpose is a 20-year story in most cases. It happens that sometimes you have to have a look at your purpose again, like you are doing. Because the purpose can always as the strategy, the organization, and the values, the purpose can also get dated. Ford had a great alignment of purpose with everything else for 22 years, but then they missed the environment completely, and GM was created as a stronger competitor. Everybody on their job, even the janitor and the CEO, have had sometimes to manage things and sometimes to lead others. So I prefer to talk in terms of management and leadership, not manager and leader. And I think that a very big distinction can be made very simply, or otherwise cannot be made at all. Management is worrying about the how. Leadership is also worrying about the why. And I think that's good enough of a one sentence to capture the difference. And those are the leaders that we all remember, who have managed in memorable speeches or other communications, I think in the future will be in the YouTube or my place, whatever, to capture this combination of why and how. By listening to you, and I'm not going to speak to that chart, by listening to you speak as a group, as individuals, yesterday in a smaller group and today in the panel, I think you are converging. You're converging on a group, and I don't think but I think it is premature to settle on a word. But Andrew, I don't know where are you? I don't know whether you did this intentionally or synchronicity worked. Eventually, it will be good to come with an association of one word. Medibank is associated with one word. Not yet. Don't rush it, because it might take more in consideration of the past that we realize right now. I believe that you are 1/3 of the journey done. And this is an enormous achievement for 1 year of effort. I think there is another third of the job that remains to be done in tweaking the economic engine in a way that allows you to do more good while you're doing well. And there is another third of the job that remains to be done to work the system upstream. I heard about this waste in the system. By yourselves, you cannot help all the banks in the world if the system continues to be as inefficient here in Australia and worldwide as it is. The good news is that a lot of people are wondering about the same issue. You happen to be cutting edge in both your worries and your solutions, now taking the form of campaigns, but now it's becoming a global issue of focus. So the world will be transformed on healthcare and healthcare insurance in the next 10, 20 years, whether we like it or not. It's a historic inevitability. And definitely it's my dream, your dream I'm sure even more so, that you will be shaping the rules of the game and benefiting from shaping them as well. It enlightens strategy very much. It forces the mind to think about all the components of the leadership agenda, which are the following: strategy, how it fits to the organization, how it fits with the values of the organization, how it fits with the kind of people we want mostly to hire, and how it fits with innovation. Innovation, being one of the two sources of advantage, is not necessarily a good thing. It is necessary to sustain your advantage, but not all innovations are fit with all purposes. So thinking about purpose, not just for its own sake, but as a torch to all other issues that the company is engaged with, is the proper deployment of the concept. And I think you are doing it. You are doing it by already having engaged yourselves in both a strategic exercise and in the 4 campaigns exercise. Purpose is the should, if you want, is what we want to be. Campaigns is what we are. What we are doing today defines who we are. What we want to be defines our destination. If we choose the right campaigns, we are moving towards our destination. If we don't, we don't. So we need campaigns to turn purpose into action. And I'm very impressed that you already engaged in 4 of them. But what are campaigns? Let me offer another definition from what we have on the chart. Campaigns are modern dancing versus classical dancing. You can improvise, but you better be committed to what you're doing and better produce the spectacle and the fun. You don't have to follow any particular rules, bureaucratic rules. You can allow the 4% of your brain to work. Why are they different from the strategic initiative? Because they also answer the question why. And we cannot have that many, because we cannot just keep answering the question why all the time. So 3 or 4 is the maximum number of campaigns that an organization can sustain. If you want the maximum dosage of change, the maximum adaptation that 4% of the brain allows us to have. And right now, you are at the maximum. And if it feels tough going, the reason is very simple, because it is tough going. Andrew started by talking about momentum. And you and I have a different definition about momentum, but that's pretty irrelevant. These are semantics. I would say what you call momentum, I call inertia. And you need momentum to overcome inertia. And purpose here helps the campaigns by focusing the mind on the connection between how with why. Let me give a real example from your lives. Why is the IT person at Medibank different than the IT person working for a bank across the street? I was extremely impressed by your CIO's explanation. Because the IT person in Medibank has a purpose, and definitely has a different purpose than the guy across the street. The fact that the IT person does not see the client makes no difference whatsoever. They have a different how from the person that is answering the phone, but the why remains the same. Just to take a militaristic example for a second, out of 7 people that serve in the army, only 1 ever sees the front line. The other 6 are doing useful things. Imagine if that person in the front line did not have bullets or wireless to communicate. Imagine another video from what we saw on Ben. That mother in Johns Hopkins from America saying, Medibank is a great place, but every time I call them, their systems don't work. You didn't hear that. It seems like the team is ticking. It seems like the IT guys are also doing their best, so you can have the best story. And we do need to create, through the campaigns, also momentum for the numbers guys. I believe the moment that you will see the campaign succeeding and you will see how they contribute to the economic engine, the momentum will increase. And I think it is the challenge of the next phase. Ladies and gentlemen, I will use a scary word. This is a transformation process. You are transforming your company and you are transforming yourselves. By transforming yourselves, looking at the world differently, you are transforming your company. And you are doing it not because you have adopted a new notion, a new word called purpose, but because you are engaged as an organization in 4 campaigns already. Transformation is nothing more, nothing less than a sequence of campaigns. You're doing it. And the admirable thing about the exercise is that you don't have to. You're doing it for the best of possible reasons, because you have chosen to. You have chosen not to be just good, but to go and become great. You will need to stay on it. It's only phase 1. There are 2 more phases coming. But transformation is not an easy business. And when it is, but it is successful and sustainable when we all are aligned on why we are doing it. And I suppose this is the objective of us getting together today. It is important that we study from the success of others, and I think we're doing this all the time. The good news is that transformation is a journey that many other companies, the chart speaks to that of British Airways, have undergone successfully. We know what works from transformation and what does not work from transformation. And one thing we know about transformation is the transformation that creates enduring advantage is a transformation that is purpose-led. This is not me speaking. This is the evidence that stems out of the business literature on studies that have lasted for at least 50 years. Transforming ourselves does not mean that we stop running the shop. There is something to be said about administration. I'm the first to say that administration and doing the things we do right on an everyday basis is an absolutely prerequisite to create a room for leadership. So while you're running those campaigns, for God's sake, don't forget the morning job. Because otherwise, you will lose your right to transformation. And it would be a great pity, having gone as far as you have. To those of you who are engaged in those campaigns, I have a little bit of advice, which is to use the time framework. It is in the book, for those who have it, in the last chapter. If you want to change something, to go from point A to point B, think of how to do it, but also examine how to inspire others. The biggest obstacle to change is that people do not believe it's possible. And inspiration is the redefinition of the possible. Then think mobilization, how to mobilize support internally and externally, and only then think execution. Jumping from thinking to execution, jumping from a presentation to let us go and do it now, guys, is a recipe of disaster. It's the reason that most transformation campaigns, most transformation efforts, most campaigns have failed. The human spirit needs to join the human mind because before real change, transformation can occur. You need to appeal to the senses by mobilizing people, to the feelings, and you need, quite frankly, to appeal to the spiritual powers within each of us to conceive and contemplate a future that yesterday or the day before was deemed inconceivable. And this is inspiration. A lot about change, a lot about transformation is lost because people don't bother contemplating how they can inspire others and themselves. Life is not a cognitive exercise. We are all people with feelings and people with spiritual needs. And those needs don't stop when we enter the workplace. They need to be addressed. Campaigns, whether campaigns are military campaigns or advertising campaigns or business campaigns, are structured sequences of action. And I suggest in the new book, a checklist. You need to have a target. You don't have a campaign if you cannot tell me what's going to be different 12 months after the campaign is launched. And again, you need to have a theme. Otherwise, it's just an initiative or a project. Why does this make a difference for our purpose? Why, if this is not achieved, the purpose will be achieved? Why, if it is achieved, the purpose will be advanced? And you need to have a team that goes with it. But then you need to understand the difficulties of change. Change is not an easy business. You need to have tools. What will that call center person have in front of her or him that did not have before, as an example? You need to have tactics. How are we going to talk to the client differently than before? And then we need to examine issues of trust. People don't like change. If you have a campaign that is going to become adopted by the totality of the organization, you have to explain to the totality of the organization, and sometimes to the customer base, what is in it for them, and how they can check on you. And then you need to have, of course, a timeline. Nothing is forever, definitely not even a campaign. A campaign is only about 12 months. And within the purpose life cycle of 20, you will have a lot of campaigns and perhaps more than one or two strategy exercises, because strategy, the drawing of the straight line from point A to point B, is relevant for no more than 5 to maximum 7 years. I was tasked to take you back to Purpose 101 and tell you the things that your management heard almost 12 months to the day before you undertook this journey. The future of this journey will have a lot to do with campaigns. If you want, life is a campaign. I think I have achieved more things in my life than I had hoped as a teenager, but definitely I failed to achieve anything I had aspired to. Therefore, strategy for me didn't work. The notion of campaigns works. If the journey is going to be for 3 years, don't expect it to be linear. There will be moments that you will scratch your heads and say, does this work or not? There will be moments that you have to pause. It's not going to be a straight line. You have to be adaptive to the environment and to each other. But if you persevere with a sense of purpose, I have the privilege of observing yesterday and sharing with all of you today, this company is going to really become something to talk to your children and grandchildren about. Thank you for having me.